My entire family turned their backs on me after discovering that my wife had been unfaithful with my cousin, resulting in the birth of a child. Throughout this ordeal, my family kept this devastating secret hidden, even as I grappled with my own struggles to achieve success. Now, unexpectedly, they are reaching out to me again, seeking reconciliation. There's a significant amount of background to this story, so please bear with me as I walk you through the entire situation to my family. I am a 44-year-old man, who has been married for a decade to my wife, a 41-year-old woman, with whom I've been together for 13 years. We share an 8-year-old son and have built a life that, on the surface, seems quite happy. However, this is not my first marriage. My first marriage occurred when I was just 22 years old, but unfortunately, it ended in divorce after 3 years for reasons that remain unclear to me. Let's call my ex-wife Amy. Amy and I have been together since our middle school days. We were essentially childhood sweethearts. As soon as we graduated from college and secured stable jobs, we decided to get married. The initial years of our marriage were smooth, but after a few years, things began to change inexplicably. I made every effort to keep the romance alive, but gradually, I sensed that Amy was no longer interested in maintaining our relationship. Despite my attempts to rekindle our bond, just a few weeks before our 3rd wedding anniversary, Amy handed me divorce papers, declaring that she was done with our marriage. I was desperate to salvage our relationship, and sought a reason to understand why we had to part ways after so many years together. However, Amy could only tell me that she no longer loved me, offering no further explanations. This revelation left me deeply upset, but I felt powerless to change her mind. Consequently, I chose to proceed with the divorce to avoid making her even more unhappy by forcing her to stay and prolonging the separation process. Since we didn't share many assets, the divorce was relatively uncomplicated, and after its finalization, I never saw Amy again. I heard from a few friends that Amy had relocated to another city and severed ties with everyone, which is a typical reaction, but what was truly perplexing was that my own family ceased communication with me around the time of the divorce. Instead of offering support during such a challenging period, they began to distance themselves. After the divorce was finalized, I made sincere efforts to reconnect with my family, only to discover that I had been blocked on all fronts. I even attempted to visit them multiple times, but neither my parents nor my sister ever opened the door to me. This was incredibly disheartening, especially since I was already navigating a difficult emotional landscape. The impact of their withdrawal was profound, causing me significant distress for several years post-divorce. My depression deepened to the point where I lost the motivation to do anything, leading me to quit my job and remain unemployed for several months. However, amidst these dark times, I was fortunate to have friends who stood by me, offering the encouragement I needed to strive for a better future. With my family absent from my life post-divorce, my friends became my support system, and their unwavering belief in me eventually inspired me to pursue my dream of opening my own restaurant. Launching a restaurant had always been a dream of mine, but I had postponed it to save enough money and because I still had responsibilities towards Amy during our marriage. However, after the divorce, I felt ready to embark on this entrepreneurial journey alone. I decided to name the restaurant based on a suggestion from my parents, reaching out to a few investors with the help of my friends. We developed a solid business model, and within a few years, I successfully opened my first restaurant. It took nearly 4 years to regain my footing after the divorce, and 2 years into my new venture, I met my current wife. We were introduced through mutual friends at a party, where she expressed her admiration for my restaurant. This sparked our conversation, and after 3 years of dating, I chose to embrace love once more by proposing to her. Now, 10 years into our marriage, we are blessed with our son, and our lives have flourished both personally and professionally. My professional journey began with that first restaurant, and as its success grew, so did my ambitions. I gradually expanded, eventually becoming the CEO of my own hospitality group, which now owns a semi-popular chain of restaurants and hotels. We are actively planning further expansions to increase our presence beyond the state, marking significant progress despite the uphill battles. My hard work paid off, and when I was recently invited to an interview, I took it as a sign of my accomplishments and agreed to participate. Little did I know that this interview would trigger a whirlwind of events in my life. The interview was picked up by a moderately popular news channel, and I didn't anticipate that my family would watch it. Even if they had, I never expected them to appear at my office. While my workplace location is public information, their decision to show up during work hours was inappropriate and unsettling. Just 3 days ago, they did exactly that, disrupting my workday. It was strange to see them after such a long time, especially when my wife was at work and my son was at school. The receptionist informed me that it was my parents and sister waiting outside. This unexpected reunion left me bewildered, so I instructed the receptionist to inform them that I would address the matter later and ask them to leave. However, they refused to comply and began causing a scene, forcing me to step in to prevent security from removing them before I could speak with them. I approached them in the lobby, and upon seeing me, they acted as if nothing had changed in the 2 decades since we last interacted. They began showering me with praise for my success and how inspiring my story was, which felt bizarre since, as family, they should have been part of that journey. I tried to dismiss their compliments, insisting I needed to return to work, but they continued, mentioning that they had seen my family featured in my interview. It seemed they had been referring to the segment where I spoke about my wife and son, accompanied by family photos. They expressed a strong desire to meet my wife and their grandson, claiming they had been apart from us for so long. They also criticized me for not making enough effort to stay in touch after the divorce, suggesting I should have tried harder to maintain family connections. This made me realize that this might finally be my chance to uncover the truth about what transpired years ago. I decided to listen rather than dismiss them, even taking a seat in the lobby to delve deeper into the past and seek closure. As they spoke, I uncovered the real reason behind Amy's decision to divorce me and why my family had abandoned me all those years ago. You might have guessed it by now. Amy had been unfaithful to me, a fact I had no idea about, because my parents had been complicit in covering it up. However, before passing judgment on them, it's important to understand that they had their reasons. According to them, these reasons justified helping their daughter-in-law maintain her affair with my cousin. Amy's affair was with my cousin Carl, who is my father's older brother's son. When they finally disclosed this information, everything began to make sense. Their assistance, the exclusion from family events over the past 2 decades, and the complete ostracization I experienced despite having no fault in the matter. Carl, my cousin, was a pampered and entitled individual whom I had always disliked. His mother passed away when he was just 6 months old, leaving his father and the rest of the family to believe that he deserved leniency in all his actions. Consequently, Carl grew up without proper guidance, always managing to evade repercussions for his behavior. The situation was further complicated by the fact that my uncle, Carl's father, was my dad's employer when he started the family business. My father joined the business later, and after my marriage, Carl and Amy decided they wanted to be together. My family felt they had no choice but to support their relationship to avoid my uncle's wrath, even if it meant jeopardizing my relationship with them. They informed me that post-divorce, my uncle insisted that no family member, including my parents and sister, maintain any contact with me. Despite their attempts to protest, Amy revealed she was pregnant with my child and declared that anyone who wished to have a relationship with their grandchild would have to sever ties with me. To add to the deception, I was never informed about Amy's pregnancy when she filed for divorce, nor was she present during that time, as she had moved out long before the divorce was finalized. Unbeknownst to me, I had already become a father well before my son was born. Additionally, I learned that I have a daughter who is nearly 20 years old, who has never met me and believes Carl is her biological father. This revelation was the essence of what my parents shared about the true events of those years. I was struggling to comprehend the magnitude of what was being revealed, feeling as though I was hearing a fabricated story, and needing to pinch myself to accept it as reality. Essentially, my family had cut me off to facilitate Amy and Carl's relationship, fearing my uncle's potential retaliation. In my view, they abandoned me out of cowardice rather than genuine concern for job security, as they could have approached me with the truth and allowed me to handle the situation independently. Their decision to conceal Amy's pregnancy and my daughter's existence for 20 years was unfathomable, and they only chose to reach out now because of my success, hoping to bask in a portion of it. My sister even went as far as claiming that I owed my success to them, merely because I had adopted the restaurant name they suggested years ago, a trivial contribution compared to the lack of support they provided over the years. I found her assertion so absurd that I laughed it off, and insisted they leave immediately, threatening to have security remove them if they did not comply. Their immediate defiance led to a heated argument, during which they pleaded for understanding and accused me of being ungrateful. I made it clear that their motives were purely selfish, seeking to leverage my success for their own benefit, which they vehemently denied. My sister even tried to claim credit for my achievements, despite having provided minimal support, which only further irritated me. Ultimately, I followed through with my threat, and they were escorted out of the building by security. They were understandably upset, trying to justify their actions by saying they had no other options, but I refused to buy into their narrative. They made a choice 20 years ago that led to their current predicament, and I believe they must now face the consequences of that decision. Living without contact with me for 2 decades has been a challenge they can manage, and I have no intention of re-engaging with them. 3 days have passed since that incident, and they continue to attempt contact through social media messages, work emails, and occasional visits to my office, though they haven't dared to enter yet. Their attitude has noticeably shifted. Now, their messages are filled with apologies, and they appear genuinely remorseful when they show up outside my workplace. However, I simply drive by without acknowledging them, feeling almost pity for their persistence. I have discussed this situation with my wife, as we also need to consider my newly discovered daughter, who I wasn't aware of until recently. We are torn between wanting to reach out to her, and being unsure if it's the right decision. Additionally, my family is unlikely to stop their attempts to communicate, until they receive another opportunity to speak with me. My wife suggests that, for the sake of clearing the air and removing the lingering toxicity from my emotional well-being, I should at least attempt to have a conversation with them, possibly inviting them to our home. This could help us all move forward, but personally, I have no interest in revisiting the past. I prefer to continue ignoring their advances until they cease on their own, primarily because I lack the emotional capacity to deal with them after everything I've uncovered. This dilemma has left us struggling to find a way to handle the situation effectively. Update 1. A week and 3 days have passed since I first shared my story, and my wife and I have decided to persist in ignoring my family's attempts to reconnect. Thankfully, in the past few days, they have stopped visiting my workplace, possibly due to losing interest or being deterred by security measures. This cessation has brought me some relief, as it has become easier to stop dwelling on their presence. Their mere appearance had been a constant reminder of the pain they caused, but now that they have ceased their visits, I no longer feel the same level of discomfort. Consequently, I no longer feel guilty about disregarding their messages. They can continue to apologize endlessly, but it won't alter the fact that they failed me as a family, and no amount of apologies will rectify that betrayal. They persist in sending messages from various accounts and email addresses, and at this point, I see no reason to block them, as they are likely to create new channels to apologize, which I will continue to ignore. We'll see how long they can sustain this behavior, and how sincere their remorse truly is. Regarding the issue of my daughter, my wife and I were initially at a loss on how to approach the situation. We did, however, manage to obtain her name and college information from my parents during one of our conversations. My assistant successfully located her social media profiles, but I hadn't taken any action yet, uncertain of the appropriateness of reaching out, and unsure of how to disclose that I am her biological father, especially since she's an adult. It would be inappropriate to show up at Amy's residence demanding custody, and frankly, I prefer not to involve her in this turmoil. Despite my disdain for Amy and the deceit surrounding our family, I cannot extend the same animosity towards my daughter, as she is my blood relative. I am seeking advice on how to approach her about this revelation, and whether it's even advisable to do so at this juncture. Update 2. After reviewing the comments and feedback on my initial update from 3 days prior, my wife and I have made the decision to take action regarding my daughter. We recognized that waiting for the perfect moment was futile, and that we needed to confront the situation head-on. Given that my daughter resides in a different state, and considering the impracticality of traveling to meet her in person immediately, we opted to send her a message first and gauge her response. We reached out to her via Instagram, explaining our circumstances as thoughtfully as possible, and now we are awaiting her reply. This step is undoubtedly complex, as it involves navigating a myriad of emotions for both of us. I am particularly impressed by my wife's unwavering support throughout this process, as she stands by me while I reach out to a daughter I had been unaware of for so long. The emotional landscape is intricate for all involved, but we are committed to handling it with care. I am hopeful that my daughter will respond positively, as I yearn to establish a relationship with her. As for my parents, they have ceased visiting my workplace for an extended period, but yesterday they sent me a lengthy email expressing sincere apologies for their past actions. They earnestly desire to mend our relationship, and have asked for just one opportunity to do so. They assured me that they will not reach out again, and will instead wait for me to initiate contact if and when I feel ready. I am somewhat relieved that they have taken the hint and acknowledged my desire to distance myself, especially since I have numerous other challenges to address at the moment. The last thing I need is additional drama from them. I am hopeful that they will honor their promise and refrain from contacting me further unless I choose to engage with them. Given that I now understand the true reason behind their 2-decade-long silence, the situation with them has only deteriorated. I feel deeply betrayed and hurt, emotions that are unlikely to fade anytime soon. On a positive note, discovering my daughter has been a silver lining, and I am optimistic that she will be open to building a relationship with me. I have not yet informed my son about this development, as I want to avoid giving him false hope in case she decides not to engage. However, if things proceed well, he might have the opportunity to connect with a sister, and I can finally know the daughter I never knew I had. My emotions are all over the place, and I am striving to maintain my composure. Update 3. Almost 2 weeks ago, I reached out to my daughter through social media, sending her a message that introduced myself and explained our familial connection. I patiently waited for 2 weeks without any response, and today, I finally received a text from her. Her reply was brief. She mentioned that she had discussed my message with her mother and had come to the realization that I am her biological father. This news was undoubtedly shocking for her, as she had spent the past 20 years believing that Carl was her father and was unaware of her true parentage. She also learned the entire story of how Amy and I ended up in our current predicament. In her message, she expressed a desire to meet me and my family, so we have arranged to fly out and see her this weekend. Currently, she is not on speaking terms with her family, which is why she lacks the funds to travel and come see us. The details of her conversation with Amy are unclear, but when she confronted Amy about the message she received, Amy initially denied everything before eventually being forced to reveal the truth. I have yet to hear from Amy and hope she will not reach out, as I have no intention of engaging with her. However, my family has already broken their promise to cease communication, and have started attempting to talk to me immediately after learning that I contacted my daughter. Apparently, my uncle is furious about my discovery, which is unsurprising since they had invested 2 decades in ensuring I remained oblivious to the situation to prevent any disruption in their lives. My uncle holds my parents accountable for this, even though my father no longer works for him and now runs his own independent business. Despite this, my uncle remains intimidated by his older brother, and has been imploring me to inform Carl, or someone else, that they were not involved in this situation, despite the implausibility of anyone believing that given the distance and lack of prior communication over the past 20 years. It's ironic how desperately they are trying to maintain their relationship with my uncle now, especially since their actions have directly led to me being estranged from my daughter for 2 decades. Frankly, I am indifferent to their concerns, as it was their actions that deprived me of a relationship with my daughter, making this the least I can do for them. Update 4. Hello everyone. Today, my family and I finally met my daughter, and the experience was a mix of emotions. Initially, it felt strange and awkward, but it soon became profoundly emotional and ultimately beautiful. She appears to be a kind and compassionate individual, which is surprising considering she was raised by 2 of the most unkind and dreadful people I know. Perhaps they did an adequate job raising her, or maybe it's just her inherent nature, but she struck me as an intelligent and mature young woman. We had an extensive conversation about her relationship with Amy and her father, during which she revealed that they were naturally opposed to her meeting us. However, after uncovering the truth, she no longer cares about her parents' opinions. Amy and her father have no other children, so she doesn't anticipate abandoning them entirely, but she intends to distance herself for a while to process everything. She expressed the need for time to develop a relationship with me, as she is currently in a complicated mental state, which I fully understand. Overall, our meeting was incredibly positive. She seemed to get along well with my wife and her half-brother too. We shared a meal together and discovered that her grandparents, the families of her grandfather's brother, had been in contact with her all along. She always found their emotional attachment to her perplexing, given that they are not her biological grandparents, but now it all makes sense. Despite this newfound understanding, her perspective on them has changed significantly after learning the truth, and so has mine. I can completely empathize with her feelings, even though she is only 20 and grappling with the realization that she has been lied to her entire life by those she once considered closest to her. Both of us recognize that we have work to do to build our relationship, and we are hopeful for a better future. I am simply grateful that our meeting went smoothly, and that my family appears to be content with the outcome. Regardless of the past actions of my family, Amy and Carl, what truly matters now is that we have an opportunity to rectify the situation after so many years. I am committed to making the most of this chance to rebuild and strengthen our family bonds.